Hello, welcome to yesterday's Airlines. I've just been away for the weekend, down visiting family, but also having the opportunity to pop into the London Gatwick Aviation Fair, which is always a good visit. And I've come back and there are multiple brand release announcements that have happened in the last couple of days. And I'm going to be starting with Phoenix, their May announcements. And it does seem like it has been a while actually since Phoenix have announced anything, and that is true because the last announcement video I did was back in mid-March for that whole bunch of fantasy A380s and 747 classics, which I put the cat amongst the pigeons rather by by putting into writing my distaste for their 747s. But anyway, none of those models seem to have actually appeared yet, and they didn't announce anything in April. But we've got a set of May announcements here to discuss, and there are a decent number of models this month. In fact, it's quite a large month, I would say, for Phoenix because we've got 16 different models. But I have to say that when you look through the list here, we're going to discuss in a few moments, there is a lot of repetition. And I'm not sure whether this is something Phoenix have started doing just recently or whether it's something they've always done and I just wasn't paying close attention previously. But a lot of these models have been made by Phoenix before, so it must be super cheap for them to be able to get out these releases because they're basically just reproductions. But there is still some uniqueness in the set here, but not a lot, I have to admit, because a lot of what they have announced this month has already been announced by others. Anyway, before we get into this, as always, subscribe to the channel, please, if you're enjoying the videos, and I hope you do. Keep an eye on my other channels at Airlines, at Instagram and Facebook, and check out yesterday's airlines.com. I'm always posting new content to all of my channels. A lot of it comes direct from the website, not all of it, but a lot of it. And the website is obviously the place, the central area for the work that I do. My most recent website update is a detailed review of a very nice Herpa Tupolev TU144 charger. Don't get to review much Herpa because they're so absent from 400 scale on the whole, but couldn't resist giving this one a review. Beautiful model, not perfect as nothing almost is, but really nice model anyway. So check out that review. There'll be more coming on the TU144, and I've got plenty of other cool content coming up in the near future. Going to have a review of the jcwings United 747, going to be writing more about the charger. Also got lots of DT Customs related content on the way. So keep an eye out at the website and on my other channels. But in this video, it's Phoenix time, and we'll take a look through this month's Phoenix release announcements and see whether they've got much into supersonic or whether it is trickling down into scrap metal. You know there's going to be some scrap metal because there's 747 in this release set. But it's not all bad. There is some good stuff. Okay, so straight into the Airbuses, as always with these videos. And there are 6 Airbuses this month, starting with this single narrow body, which is an HK Express A321neo B Kilo Alpha. I talked about HK Express, nowadays a subsidiary of Cathay Pacific, and they've got this new rather bland scheme with this E logo, which is really not particularly enthralling. I mean, they didn't have to think too much to do that. The previous scheme was so much nicer. But the reason I talked about it is because jcwings have announced the same model, so it's kind of a bit of a underwhelming pair because the jcwings A321 isn't great either, and it's going to take them ages to produce it, but the Phoenix A321 is worse, and it will be out sooner. But I'm really hoping that somebody else announces this, I probably would buy an HK Express A321 in this scheme, but I would be really hopeful that maybe we will get an HYJL or an NG version, or a Panda version, and I won't have to settle for one of this pair, because in fact I'm not going to settle for one of this pair. I'm not going to buy any more Phoenix A321s. The mold just isn't really up to standards. And I have bought them before. I do own a few, but the fuselage shape, the wing root, the incorrect wing trailing edge without the right flap settings, it just adds up to a pretty underwhelming mold. So I'm going to put this one straight away down into gas guzzler territory. It's perhaps a little harsh. They're not awful looking models, but at the same time, they really should have updated that mold, or just replaced it. But Phoenix don't seem keen to replace old molds. They seem quite happy to keep on churning out content on old molds. In fact, probably of all the manufacturers, they're the least interested in updating serious parts of the mold. They may modify the engines, they may have added aerials, but they have not replaced a lot of very old molds. And their A321 is not stellar by any means. The A320 is also from the same mold, but it does look better. Probably just because it's shorter, and at least it's got the right wing on it. Next up, we've got some very samey looking A350s. There are three, and all three of these have been announced by other brands already. First up, we've got ITA, or ITA Airways, and it's the Monza 100 A350 EII Foxtrot. And this is the same aircraft which has been announced not long ago by Aviation 400. So, yeah, why would anyone buy a Phoenix version when they could wait a few months extra and get the AV400 version? Oh, I'm sure some people will. People that don't care enough about their models, I would say, because it is going to be inferior. Now, the Phoenix A350 has got a long history of people moaning about it. It has been improved. They've slightly stopped the engines from touching the ground. But it still looks kind of odd. It's still not a great mold. It's another mold which when it was released quite a long time ago, no, actually, it's never been great, as I was going to say. It was actually okay when they released it, but it wasn't. It was probably worse when they released it. But it's not dreadful. Again, I do own a couple, and they don't stick out like sore thumbs in my collection by any means. But at the same time, they do not rank up there with the Aviation 400 or ngmodels molds, or even the JC Gemini version. They are the weakest of the A350s available, and they are the oldest mold. And I've looked at this in detail at yesterdaysairlines.com, comparing the A350s, and the Phoenix version came out lowest. So, yeah, go for the AV400 version, people. It will be better. So this one is workhorsing it. I don't think the mold is bad enough that I could gas guzzler it. I think that would be a bit unfair, but it's certainly not going to be great. It's been announced by others. So has the next model, though, which is the Turkish Airlines 400th aircraft TCLGH, and I've discussed this now twice before because jcwings have announced it and Aviation 400 have announced it. All the same stuff is going to stick. The other versions will be better, but the Aviation 400 version will be best. So again, don't bother with the Phoenix one. So this is yet again workhorse, and exactly the same again with the next one, which is Series 1000 JA01 Whiskey Juliet in the colours of Japan Airlines. Yeah, I've moaned about the scheme before. I'm not going to talk about it again. I've discussed it twice in other videos, and it has been announced by Aviation 400 and jcwings. Yet again, just wait for the AV400 version. It will be better. So, yeah, once again, this is workhorse. And this is where Phoenix, in my opinion, just can't compete. They're announcing these models after competitors, and maybe their end product may come out earlier. But if you really care about quality models, then you just wait a couple of months for the AV400 version. I know jcwings may take forever, so it's not much point in waiting for that. But the AV400 version will be better. So I don't see any reason for people to buy the Phoenix versions myself. But hey, free world. Next up, though, we're moving to the A380s, and Phoenix at least are not just doing spoiler releases anymore for the AV400 versions. Both of these aircraft are wearing the same reg. It's DAIMA, so it's the same aircraft, but two different scheme versions. The first one is a special scheme, or a small special scheme. Basically, it's got a decal associated with it saying Danker. It's a thank you A380 logo on the front, which is small, but looks quite cool. I've talked about the A380 quite a lot previously. Obviously, you've got the new AV400 version. The Phoenix version, though, is still commendable, very nice model. And this hasn't actually been made before, from what I can see. There have been quite a few Lufthansa A380s. In fact, there have now been 9 announced just by Phoenix themselves. But even though Phoenix have made 5 previous old livery versions, they haven't made this version. All the others have just been standard schemes, except for one which has a Christmas scarf in roughly the same position by the cockpit window. So I'm going to put this one up into High Flyer. It's a good mould. It's never been made before by anyone else. Nice to see. Tiny bit of inventiveness here. The second model is just wearing the standard scheme, though, so that one is just the same as pretty much all the others that have been made by Phoenix. There have obviously been other versions made by Aviation 400 recently, and also by Gemini, so very much not unique, very much been done before, very much surely you already own this if you wanted it. Workhorse. It's workhorse. And that ends the look at the Phoenix Airbuses from this month. So overall, it's a reasonably disappointing batch, a batch of really ordinary models that have been made better by others, or will be made better by others, with just that one, I don't know, highlight is a strong term, in terms of the Danker A380, which is unique, but not very exciting. Moving on to the Boeings, and this is where we obviously start with that 747-200. It's Qantas, it's the standard Qantas 1980s colours. The initial artwork, which I've got here, is actually incorrect, and it's got a full red tail cone. They've modified the artwork, so I'm sure they'll get that right, but it's still on a completely awful mould. Even the artwork looks awful because they've got... The artwork looks bad, it doesn't look like a 747 nose even in the artwork, which is vaguely entertaining. I'm not going to discuss these things anymore too much, and I call them things because they're barely aircraft. I've written that piece at the website. Please check that out if you're not sure what I'm talking about and why Phoenix 747s are so disastrously bad. As others have said, it's entirely within your purview if you want to go out and buy these, but hey, I'm doing a review video here, and I'm not going to lie. It's going to be a bad model, which may look okay from certain angles, but really isn't good. And if you're only buying models to look at them from 6 foot away, then it's a bit funny, really, isn't it? So, hey, it's up to you. You want to buy it, but I think it's scrap metal, and that is where it is going and where it belongs. The same can't be said for their 747-8s, and then we've got 3 of those this month. But again, none of them are showing a great deal of inventiveness. So the first 2 are both Air China 747-8s. They appear to be exactly the same, just with different registrations, B2481 and B2487. These will be the 7th and 8th Air China 747-8s that have been made, and Phoenix themselves have made 4 of those previous releases, so that's 6 of 8 that have been made by Phoenix. The last time they made it was 2018, so admittedly it's been 5 years, but these aren't, I don't believe, enormously hard to come by. But I imagine they'll sell fine in the Chinese market, and the Phoenix 747-8, it's okay. It's not spectacular, but it's okay. The biggest area, I think, is the wing seam, which is just incorrectly shaped and not very nuanced, and that's not unusual for Phoenixmodels, where they just, at the beginning of the wing there, where it joins the fuselage, they just have a very round slot-in area. It doesn't replicate how it looks on the real aircraft. But otherwise, the mold is decent enough, and I'm sure these will be fine. But they've been made so many times before that they're going to be workhorse. And the third 747-8 is going to join them there as well. This one's Lufthansa. I know these are popular, and I know people are buying them, and I know all of that. But there have been 14 Lufthansa 747-8s made, and once again, Phoenix has made this version before, which is in the old colours. They made it in 2015. So again, it's 8 years ago, but so what? Other people have made it since, and is it really that sought after? Maybe it is, but it isn't exciting me, and it has been made before. And there will be better versions coming from ngmodels, because even if NG don't fix the perceived issues with the forehead on their 747-8 samples, it's still a better mold than the Phoenix standard version, which is hardly perfect in that space either and has other issues. So score-wise, the NG samples were still better, and they're going to release both Air China and Lufthansa because there's a tiny number of liveries to make using the 747-8 mold. So it's up to you whether you want to wait or whether you just want to go and buy the Phoenix version. I'm sure it'll sell well, but it is still workhorse. There's nothing to elevate it above that. There's one more 747-8 to discuss in this video, and that one is a freighter, and that one is in the colours of Silkway Airlines, the Azerbaijani cargo airline. It's not the first time that Silkway has been made. It has been made both by Phoenix and Gemini previously. The difference here is that this version has a special scheme 10-year logo associated with it. It's not dramatically changing the standard scheme, but it does have this 10 and Silkway. I can't read what the actual script says, but it's got the logo amidships with Silkway and some text beneath it. I mean, it's kind of nothing special really. So it's basically enabling Phoenix to re-release the model they'd made previously in 2015 again, but with a slightly different sticker on it. Yeah, yet again, I'm not sure what the interest is in Silkway. Is it that strong? It's kind of a slightly, I guess it's a fairly mainstream cargo airline. I think it's at least unique, and I'm perhaps damning with fake praise there. It's not exciting me. It'll be a nice model. The mold's fine. Obviously, some people, or quite a lot of people, much prefer the freighter version of the Phoenix mold over the jcwings one because of the shape of the hump. But once again, I think that the NG version will be better, and it would be surprising if they didn't make Silkway. But if you want this special scheme version, then this is the only place in town to get it. And for that reason, I'm going to put this one up to high fly. It's a good mold. It's a unique scheme. It's got that little bit extra, I feel. So we're moving out of the 747s, and obviously I feel this has been a reasonably underwhelming set of releases so far, but things perk up a little bit now. And much like jcwings, Phoenix have been using their 767-300 mold more recently, and for some slightly less Phoenixy airlines than usual. And the next model is Canadian, which is not a country which Phoenix often releases models for. It is, in fact, a Canadian Airlines 767-300 ERC F-cab, wearing the 90 scheme with the red chevron on the tail. This is a model which has only been made once before by anybody, so that in itself does make it more interesting. I am looking at this artwork and I'm seeing quite a light coloured top. In fact, it looks almost white, and obviously I don't think CF Cab ever wore a white top to its livery. I'm just looking her up now to see if she did. If they put a white top on it, this is going to be pretty disastrous. But assuming they don't, and that they realise that Canadian did not have a white top scheme, then this is going to be a decent release. The Phoenix 767 is a bit slab-sided where the wing joins to the fuselage, but generally, as I've said before, it's good. It's a model I like. It's one that I am happy to buy. I actually don't need this model because I've got the Aero Classics version, but that was released a long, long time ago, way back in 2003, and is going to be pretty hard to find. So this is a good selection by Phoenix and relatively interesting 767-300. So for me, this one is high flyer quite comfortably, and probably of the models that I've looked at so far, the one which most deserves to be high flyer, I would say. The next model is also a 767-300ER. This one's a bit more modern. This one is a cargo airline. It's SF Airlines, which is a major Chinese cargo carrier. Their registration is B222 Delta. This one has winglets, and that is the primary difference between this release and the release that was made back in 2016 by Phoenix, which didn't have winglets. jcwings have also made both a version with and without winglets. I own the one which doesn't have winglets. The one which they released with winglets only comes as part of that very expensive 3-plane cargo set that JC made, which was nice, but makes it difficult to acquire the 767. So in this sense, this is a model that's not been made before, at least one that's not easy to get hold of without putting out a lot of money for the other parts of the set. So in that sense, again, it's a decent choice, it's a decent selection, and it will be on a decent mold, and it will be decent. But not staggeringly exciting either. I'm going to put this one up in high flyer too. But even these high flyers aren't exactly raising my blood pressure. They're all pretty okay, but not spectacular. Phoenix really needs to find a reason to exist, I feel, because a lot of these models are so generic. Even the ones that are getting into high flyer are not really stimulating. They're just kind of, they're there. And continuing that theme of meh, we've got a pair of Thai Airways International 777s. Hooray! So these aircraft, again, there's two of them. They're both effectively the same, just different regs. We've got Tango Juliet Tango and Tango Juliet Whiskey. They are the 12th and 13th Thai 777-200s that have been made in the scale. Obviously, they're not all in this scheme. Some of them are in the older scheme. But Phoenix has made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's made five previous Thai 777s wearing this livery. So it's just an endless supply of people wanting to buy these, it seems. And that, just seems odd. I mean, the last one was made in 2018, so again, they're spacing them out somewhat, but it isn't particularly exciting. Everyone knows the Phoenix 777 is perfectly fine. Personally, I don't think it's as good as the JC version, but it's perfectly fine. These will be perfectly fine. These will be perfectly workhorse because of the reasons I've said. There's no inspiration coming here. And in fact, the last model in this release set is the only one really providing a great deal of inspiration. And it isn't an Airbus or a Boeing, so that always makes it more interesting. It is a Tupolev, it is a Tu-154, it is in the colours of Cubana, it is CU Tango 1256. And I happen to know that this model was requested of Phoenix by a friend of mine, so they do take requests if you can get in contact with them, and it seems like you can only really do that if you speak the language and have access to Chinese social media probably. But they do take requests, so it is surprising how boring the majority of their release set is. This one, however, isn't boring. Doesn't quite fit my collection criteria. I've already got too many Cubana, but it is going to be quite nice. The Cubana scheme is attractive. The Phoenix TU154 is decent. It's an old mold, but it's been updated with better landing gear. It's not dreadful by any means, and it is the second TU154 they've announced in a couple of months. So hopefully there'll be some more TU154s coming, though it would be good to see perhaps some slightly more exciting airlines than Cubana and Air Koryu. I doubt Phoenix will produce more exciting airlines, unfortunately. But they've made some nice TU154s in the past. I've got a few and I like them. So there's not really any major problems here from that regard. I'm sure this will turn out and it will be super nice. I know Cuba is a country which has quite a lot of fans in terms of collecting model airliners, and I think this will be popular. This one deserves to go to supersonic, and it is really the only model this month that is getting close to supersonic. So happy to put this one up the top, balance out that scrap metal Qantas, but it'll be nice to see more of this kind of thing, more interesting airlines, because every month it's the same set of airlines and it's the same molds in use, and they're just not very interesting, or they're being made better elsewhere. So that's it really for this month's Phoenix announcements. Not a great month. You know, arguably better than last time they announced because there's less 747 Classics, but really, if you're a hardcore collector and you really care about how good the quality of individual models are, then there's not a lot in here to get you excited, because the A321s and A350s will be made better by someone else. The A380s may well be better by someone else too, if AV400 decide to make that version. The 747 Classic is trash. The 747-8s are likely to be made better by somebody else, and that basically just leaves you with a pair of 767s and a TU154, because the 777s, they've already made those before anyway, and they've been made by somebody else too. So it's really, really not an exciting set of releases. But it's Phoenix. You don't really expect them to be super exciting, and they still seem to sell it anyway. So Phoenix, keep on going, and I imagine they'll keep on going for some time, producing this level of model. But that's it for now. There, of course, has just been a second set of announcements, and these are from ngmodels, and it's a smaller set than usual from NG, so I should be able to get a video out for those quite soon. So keep an eye out for that. But until I get that video published, then keep an eye out at the website for any other new content that I put out. And thank you very much for watching, as always. I'll see you next time.